So as a result, then we're on the subject of commercial and structural repair. And maybe we'll run through these. The foundation, like what are some things that have to be considered? What are things that are wrong with the foundation, and what kind of things do you have to go in and do?
Right. So it's very common to run into a house or a commercial building where they actually didn't build the foundation correctly from the start, and it's usually undersized footers. And a lot of times they'll even have a blueprint that states what size the footer should be, and it was never made. They're cutting corners, saving money on concrete, labor, whatever. And so we'll come back in, we'll see a wall that's collapsing, we dig it back up, and we see that, okay, there's a lot of telltale signs, but then you'll see that the foundation was never adequate to begin with. Now, when we come back in, not only do we have to rebuild the foundation to the original size, we have to upsize it again just to make sure.
Okay.
Now that we're rebuilding, now that we're disturbing the earth again, we go back in a little bit farther, beef it up a little bit more so that it's not an issue. Because once something fails, everyone's doubting it. You have to turn it around and make sure everyone has complete confidence in the work that you're doing, upsizing enough to make a difference.
In terms of upsizing and beefing it up, is there an accepted 10% more of whatever?
No.
10% longer?
No, absolutely not.
Then what's the accepted?
So you have to have the knowledge of looking at the situation to see what you believe it's going to take. And with my experience, I don't just dream that up. I've been working with good architects and engineers for a long time. So now I know in certain applications what I need to do just by looking at it.
Okay.
So
and just looking at the notes here, roofs. I mean, in terms of what kinds of things happen. Now, obviously, you mentioned a tree can fall, and we're talking commercial here, so it's probably a bigger building. So
big buildings, they have roofs blow off, they have trees fall on those too.
Yeah,
but in a lot of instances, even with commercial buildings, there were a lot of buildings that had the prints right, everything was right, and they just built it wrong.
So there's a lot of there were, I don't know if they're unscrupulous or just not good skilled, but so that's one thing that could be wrong with any building. It was built incorrectly,
right?
Or as you say, a storm or something like that.
I mean, and if you want to look at statistics when it comes down to cutting corners, that could be by itself one of the largest flaws in construction. People just didn't do what they were supposed to.
Is there anything somebody could do proactively before any sort of failure even started appearing in a ceiling, or no? Is that
anybody? I suppose, and nobody's going to really pay attention to their house or building unless there's a problem.
Yeah.
But for anybody that really cares about their house or their building, every once in a while, take a walk around, take a look at things. It's like even with your car, walk around your car before you take off. Look at the tires.
Is that something you guys do? You would do in terms of somebody to hire you to come in and just take the walk? Because I wouldn't know what to look for.
A lot of times when people call me up and they have a problem with the house.
I'm even suggesting before there's if I knew I bought a really old building and I don't know who the heck built it.
If you're that's the thing. If you're buying something, you're buying an old house, you're buying an old building, and you have an inspection done on it, that's never enough. You need to have a qualified contractor walk around the building with you because they're going to know what to look for.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll walk around an old house. An old house is easy to me. You can see a part of a foundation. People will call me up and say, "Hey, there's a cracked foundation over here. I want you to come over and look at this." I'll look at the cracked foundation and say, "No, that's not a big deal. That's a standard crack. Need a little bit of mortar. We can fix that right up." But then they'll watch me walk around the outside of that house. And one old trick that I have is to look at the foundation. Foundation looks straight, that's good. And I'll look at the walls going up to the second floor and then up to the attic. Some of them have 3 floors. And sometimes I'll see walls that are starting to bow out. Well, these walls don't just bow on their own because it's all tied to big structure. So usually that's a sign of a hidden part of the foundation that's actually sinking that you can't see, but that's what's causing that.
Okay.
So then you have to sneak around the house, and then you have to get your laser out, and then you'll find somewhere where part of the house is settling, and it's putting pressure and blowing the wall out. So you have to know how to see these things. A lot of people will say, "Oh, it's just an old house, and not much to worry about."
Yeah.
Maybe not right now, but it's coming.
What getting back to roofs for a second, then in terms of repairing those, how extensive can you go, or how how easy could a roof repair be? And then how, short of taking it all off and starting,
Right.
how major could it be? But it's still going to be a good, when you're done, it's going to be solid.
Right. A lot of times roof repairs are fairly simple. It's just basic, whether you had 2x4 trusses, 2x6 trusses, or you had just open stick framing. When a tree limb comes down through it or part of the roof blows off or whatever may happen, it exposes everything. So you can basically see how to simply rebuild it as is. Usually rebuilding as is good enough. You need to put some extra bracing in there where you had to start and stop. But other than that, it brings the integrity back, strength is back, shingle it over, keep it dry, finish the inside, and you're done.
And that kind of leads us, you talked about walls a little bit, and the bowing walls.
Yeah.
Is that what tends, whenever there's something wrong with a wall, a crack or anything, is it ultimately about the foundation? Something in the house is going cattywampus, right?
If you build any building and the foundation was sized properly and it never moved, your walls are going to be perfectly straight. Your doorways are going to be straight. And, that's one of the main problems, too. There's a lot of big houses that had perimeter foundations. That's where you had to put the foundation in. And they're perfect. And that house never moves. But on the center of the house, you got a monster house. And all they did toward the center was they poured a little scratch coat of concrete down the basement. Then they started putting posts up underneath beams. And those aren't supported correctly. So now the center of the house starts to go up and down. Usually it goes down. And then you go into these old houses and you walk up to the second or third floor and you see these doorways and the doors are cut at an angle and everything's drooping. That's what happens there. So you either have to get up into the center of the house and lift beams back up, lift floors back up and straighten things, or you're going to have a crooked house.
So if there's walls that need repair and restoration, it's probably a foundation issue.
Probably.
Okay. It'll probably involve getting that, because you can't, what are you going to do? Fix the wall and it's just going to go bad again, right?
Right. And unfortunately, through the years, people keep repairing every 20 or 30 years. Homeowners come in, they keep repairing, they keep doing things.
It keeps happening.
And they don't fix the gradual problem when the wall starts sinking. Right. So by the time you come in, the house is 150 years old. So you come in 150 years after it was built. Not only do you have a lot of lifting to do, but now things have been mudded in place again, and now you're fighting other people's repairs through the years to bring it back to where it should be.
Right. Okay.
So that makes it difficult.
Makes it extra work. So get it right the first time, like anything,
and
right?
So, with experience, that will dictate how far you take something. There are some things you can fix, some things you can bring them right back to brand new, and there's some things that just aren't worth it. So you have to know the difference.
And beams, we're looking at beams in terms of what, so we're talking, these are big structural beams that are holding up
usually
the building, playing a very,
right.
How do you repair?
Well, that's the whole thing.
Short of just, taking another beam next to it and, drilling it in or riveting it in or whatever.
Right. So most people, in their house, you go down to the basement, you'll see a beam running the length of the house, all the floor joists going across the top of it. And through whatever happened through the years, you might have part of the beam that started to rot, the beam that started to pull apart. A lot of these beams are made up of dimensional lumber, 2x10s, 2x12s, and they're all bolted together, nailed together. Some of them are in pretty bad shape. Yeah. And so sometimes you can put temporary supports up underneath in your basement. Okay. And you could put new layers of 2x10s, 2x12s into the beam, bolt them back in. So you can rebuild beams that are in place like that. And they make a lot of different dimensional lumber, LVL, structural material that you can bolt back together like that.
And, you'd be able to look at a beam that hasn't actually done anything yet, but you'd probably be able to go, this could happen. Yeah, this is going to be bad.
We've had that happen.
And what if it's already happening then? But then you got to go back to getting the floor and everything up first, right? So that's a whole
right. And in a lot of instances, through the years, everything has sagged so much. We've gone down into basements and we use basically 20-ton jacks in each application.
Okay, yeah.
And I've had literally 80 to 100 tons of lifting power in one small area. Still couldn't lift. Couldn't lift it up.
To that point, are there some times where it's like, and maybe it just has to do with the age of the beam is so bad that it's not going to be enough to get it in and fix it. Somebody's now going to have to put a post or some sort
Well,
of
yeah.
supporting
A
them?
lot of times you have to put an additional post in. You have
Okay,
to put a
yeah.
better footer underneath the
comes
post
back
to
down-
begin
yeah,
with because
comes
they
back to
never
the
did that.
foundation, right?
Yeah, and so there's a lot of issues, but there's other than battling doing right from wrong and fixing everything perfectly, you're always working with people's budgets. So you have to give people the biggest bang for the buck. You have to figure out, okay, instead of spending way too much money that's over your budget, we're going to figure out how to do something that fits your budget, re-supports the main beam of the house, straightens everything up, not perfect, but enough that you really don't notice it, and it's going to last.
Okay.
So that's all. Yeah, I mean, if everybody were wealthy,
easy.
none of
Fix
us would have any
everything.
problems. But yeah.
And then this is kind of related, but the last thing under this whole, is basement repair. And when we're talking about what specifically we're talking, because we've already talked about beams, walls, floors. So
beams,
what
walls,
else?
foundations,
What else
but
is there
now
in a basement?
Basement repairs usually in those basement walls, block walls.
Yeah.
There's 100 different ways that things could be leaking. You have all these waterproofing companies, a lot of good companies.
Yeah.
They come up with a lot of different ideas on how to drill holes, put water dams in, put different drainage systems in. But there's a lot of ways. There are numerous ways to correctly rebuild basement walls, and so there's definitely a lot of options there. And there's so many potential problems with concrete block walls or poured concrete walls that you have to address everyone separately. But there's a lot of different ways to repair walls.
Well, I have to imagine if you're talking water, the first thing is stop the water from getting or redirect it, whatever. But then there's the what has it done to the wall and how do I fix the wall?
And the problem with foundations and water getting through the wall is there's only one way to really do it right, and that's the most expensive way. You dig up around the house, you put in new drain tile, new gravel down below, you put waterproofing up the walls all the way up, just like factory new. You patch and repair whatever damaged wall sections there were, and then once it's all completely waterproof the way that it was supposed to be, then you fill it right back in, and you're good to go again.
I am curious,
But that's the most expensive.
I am curious. Ultimately, does the waterproofing go away? And I always wonder about this. It's like when they first build any house or anything,
Right.
Why just this thick of rubber? I mean. But it's going to deteriorate after 20, 30 years, right? There isn't probably no material that can last.
Things will deteriorate, but the biggest problem is I've seen the best houses, even brand new houses. I've inspected them. They're 6, 7 years old. They got water coming in already because
That's inexcusable.
it's inexcusable, but basically they got the blueprints right. They put the footers in right. They did everything right. But nowadays, you're putting in new housing developments and you're building over land that isn't original. It's been disturbed a long time ago. So it's not solid footings everywhere. And I've seen brand new houses go in. Everybody thought, oh yeah, we're just digging a great big hole. We're going to build a brand new house right here. And they put it in. And a couple years later, part of the house is selling already.
Jeez.
And it's like, oh yeah. Now that we did research back, about 7 years ago, this is all dug up and they put fill back in here.
As you mentioned through the common tie through all this, whether it's the roof, the wall, the beam, it's going to come down to the foundation. Something's moving.
If you don't have a solid foundation, you're going to have problems
All right.
everywhere.
Well, thanks for sharing all this with us.
All right, great.